Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another FlashSciTalk. Today, our conversation is going to be about the role of universities in advancing sustainability. Our guest today is Professor Göran Finnveden. Göran is Vice President for Sustainable Development at KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden, and is also Professor of Environmental Strategic Analysis. As Vice President, is working with integration of sustainable development in education, research, and cooperation across the World University. So, welcome, Professor Finnveden. It's very nice to have you here today. Definitely, you are an expert on the field. It's lovely to be able to interview you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, I have 5 questions for you today. Let me start. The United Nations has urged everyone to accelerate progress in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. What role do universities and research institutions, such as yours, play in accelerating progress towards achieving the SDGs?
Oh, I think we have several roles, actually. I think one key area is, of course, education. We need to educate citizens and leaders of the society so that they can contribute to sustainable development. And we also need to do research where we develop new solutions and analyze trade-offs and interlinkages between different sustainable development goals. And we need to collaborate with society to provide meeting places, network, and facilitate cooperation for the sustainable development goals. And finally, I also think that we should play a role as a role model to take responsibility for our own impacts and decrease negative impacts and support positive impacts.
So it's interesting to see the commitment of universities really on the different level of sustainability. The SDGs address complex problems that require multiple perspectives and actions from all the parts of society. For research, how important it is to encourage more interdisciplinary approaches, and how as your organization addresses?
Yes, I think it's very important to have interdisciplinary research in order to address the sustainability challenges. At our university, we use several tools for this. We have created different kinds of platforms that work interdisciplinary and connect different parts of the university, different institutions. Specifically related to the sustainability, we have a similar mechanism and can provide some seed funding for starting new projects. And so that's one example. We also support research centers that address specific sustainability challenges. And that's, of course, very important too.
Is it often argued the research is primarily written for fellow researchers, often becoming lost in translation when it's reported to the media or it's used to inform policy decisions? What can academics do to bridge the gap between research, policy, and informing the wider public?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question, and I think that's not completely straightforward because often we have a rather simplified view of research being done and then communicated to outside society. I think it's much more complex where research and policy interacts in different ways. And I think maybe we in academia needs to learn a little bit more about policy processes and about how media works, etc., to better understand how we can interact and how we can have the influence that is needed for a more sustainable society.
So there are many ways we can look at solving the SDGs. And some solutions are focused on taking a global approach. Others require new partnerships and collaborations, or finding a local perspective and context. What approach should researchers be taking when addressing the SDGs? And can you give, for instance, an example of what you think has worked well in your institution?
I think that's important to have an interdisciplinary approach. I think it's very difficult to solve sustainability challenges without involving many different disciplines. And this is important, I think, both in education and research. And if I may, I can give one example from each area. Related to education, we have at our university what we call the Global Development Hub, where we work with education, we work with challenge-driven education. We do this in partnership with universities in sub-Saharan Africa. And we let students from both our university and the partner universities work on challenges, local challenges, both in the African context and in the Swedish context. So we have challenges from both areas and students from both areas working on the same challenge. And all these are within the frame of the global sustainable development goals, where they address a challenge related to one of the SDGs. So that's one example related to education. And another example related to research is, I think, a publication that came out last year is about artificial intelligence and the impact it can have on the global sustainable development goals. So there was a team of researchers coming from different universities, different disciplines, including artificial intelligence experts and sustainability experts, working together, going systematically through all the different sustainable development goals, identifying where the interconnections between artificial intelligence and the SDGs are. And I think that was an interesting example where they could find many areas where there are contributions, but also areas where there are potential trade-offs and conflicts, which needs to be addressed as well.
Very good point. So finally, to finish our discussion on a positive note, what final words would you like to share about how we can all help to accelerate progress toward achieving the SDGs?
And I think it's, we have different roles. We, as professionals working at universities, we can see how we can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals through our research, through our education, or in our work in the administration, and see what roles can we take in that area. But we are also having other roles in society. We are citizens, so we can work with public engagement in our role when if we have the possibility to vote or engage in discussions in society as well. And we also have other roles as parents or children or neighbors, etc. And we can seek to see how we can contribute in these different roles.
So thank you then, Professor Göran Finnveden. It's been really a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for your time, but also for sharing your perspective and for telling us what are the plans and the activities that KTH is deploying in the area of sustainability. So thank you again for being here today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.